You're the bad guy this time.
You idiot!
Yes, he certainly is. At the moment, I've been on a bit of a Spider-Man binge. This is thanks to No Way Home, seeing it twice already. I know, rookie numbers. I've replayed Spider-Man Miles Morales on PlayStation 5, having a blast through both of them. This got me really thinking about how far we've come with Spider-Man games. This random thought made me decide to go back into playing one of my favourite games of my childhood, a staple of the PlayStation 1 era and one of the most important superhero games ever. I'm of course talking about Spider-Man, or Spider-Man 2000 if you prefer, on the PlayStation 1. It's been nearly 22 years since this game came out. Oh god, I feel old saying that. But what makes this game so loved and seen by many as one of the best superhero games of all time? Well, let's dive in webs first, because, you know, Spider-Man and spiders and stuff like that. So I first played this game when I was about 7 years old. It's definitely one of the oldest games I have in my collection. There's just so much nostalgic value in replaying it, from the gameplay to the overall presentation to the story. Speaking of story, let's tackle that first. So this game has quite the tale, as we begin with Doc Ock giving a science presentation, a reformed Doc Ock may I add, and I'll give you 3 guesses how that ends. In the crowd is both Peter Parker looking like a right Chad and Eddie Brock looking straight out of an American football game, when a Spider-Man imposter appears and steals one of Doc Ock's devices, smashing Eddie's camera in the process.
See you, chump.
Eddie's day gets worse as he has a breakdown hearing J. Jonah Jameson in his head, causing Venom to resurface and swear revenge on Spider-Man, while 2 mysterious figures release a green fog covering the entire streets of New York. But I'm pretty sure you can guess who these 2 are very easily. So that's the setup for the game: an imposter Spider-Man, 2 powerful villains creating chaos on New York streets, and a returning Venom. It's a great opening to lay down who the heavy hitters are in the story and lay down the overall main plot. Although if you're not a Spider-Man fan, this opening can be quite a bit to take in, seeing as they don't give you any background on anybody in this opening. I'm going to tackle the story a bit differently here, because it's a chapter by chapter or level by level situation. Chapter 1, Bank Heist. Side note, I love how all the chapters have comic book covers on them. That is just a really great touch. Well, this is already off to a great start by having Stan Lee narrate the opening. He does this for every opening chapter in the game. Honestly, how could you hate on this man? He just fits this role so perfectly. Hearing him just speak brings a huge smile across my face like a Cheshire cat.
But this is just the beginning, Spidey fans. So get ready for a true superhero action thriller, packed to the brim with thrills and chills, twists and turns, more supervillains than you can shake a web at, and of course, non-stop web-slinging, wall-crawling action.
Anyway, we start off the level with being introduced to Black Cat, and her and Spidey talk about a bank being robbed not far from them. It turns out to be a group known as the Jade Syndicate. Spidey stops them, saves the hostages, and disposes of a bomb. Side note, does anyone else notice how many Spider-Man games love bomb missions? I swear every bloody game has at least one of these in there. Probably the least story-heavy chapter in the entire game, but a good introduction to the setting. Chapter 2 sees Spider-Man racing off to the Daily Bugle to save JJ from Scorpion. He gets there in the nick of time, defeats Scorpion, and gets the best reward possible: a lecture from J. Jonah Jameson himself.
Oh, by saving my life. But it won't work.
Oh, you're just too clever for me, JJ.
Before getting shot up by the cops and then running into Daredevil, who questions Spidey about his innocence, not before getting chased by a police helicopter across the rooftops. One thing I love about this game is the number of different cameos from other Marvel characters. While they're not key parts of the story, it does help you to remind you that Spider-Man is not the only hero in this world. He's only one piece of a massive chessboard of heroes and villains. After meeting up with Black Cat, she tells Spidey that Rhino is attacking a power plant and Venom has taken over the Jumbotron in Times Square with a message for him. I really do love this scene. First of all, Venom on a Jumbotron, 10 out of 10, best game ever. But mostly does a great job of highlighting what a great character Spider-Man is. In this moment, he has a chance to go after Venom, who has kidnapped his wife. But instead of being selfish and putting himself first, he chooses to go to the power plant to save the innocent from Rhino. It's a small part of the game, but it's a great showcase of how the developers understood Spider-Man's main characteristics. By the way, I would like to say, how many times is Mary Jane gonna get kidnapped in Spider-Man media? If anyone actually has the answer, please let me know, because I'm really curious. Hell, at this point, it might even rival Princess Peach. Anyhow, Black Cat and Spidey arrive at the plant where Rhino surprise attacks Cat, leaving Spidey to go one-on-one with him.
So I missed!
With Rhino down, Doc Ock arrives and gives Rhino to the police. However, Black Cat is abducted by two mysterious figures in a hospital van. After a quick cameo and chat with Human Torch, Spidey is surprised out of nowhere from Venom. I've got to say this right off the bat, but I love Venom in this game. It may surprise everyone when I say this, but this is my favorite version of him. He has so many great golden lines in this game, and some of them even made me just die of laughter hearing them. I mean, he looks like a big threat, but he's such a bloody idiot. He's a complete goof. Comedy Venom is best Venom. I know everybody likes villain Venom, but this Venom is best Venom. Maybe that's what they were going for with the Tom Hardy version, but nothing, and I repeat, nothing beats this masterpiece right here. After a chase across the rooftops, the two fight and we probably get my favourite cutscene in the entire game.
Where'd Spider-Wars go? Spider-Wars! Come out and play!
Tag!
Venom escapes down into the sewers with Spidey right behind him. It turns out Venom has taken the lizard's layers and let these lovely fellas out to attack Spidey. After many tunnels, puzzles, and one horrible train level I'll get back to later, we finally catch up to everyone's favourite blue meanie. I really hope someone got that reference. Spidey points out to Venom that he was in the crowd the night the imposter Spider-Man turned out, and Venom, realising how much of a moron he is, offers to help Spidey out. After that, we have this glorious scene. Remember how I said Venom has so many golden lines? Well, this is just another one.
Jeez, one little mistake. We said we're sorry.
Yeah, whatever. Now, the imposter was a shapeshifter, so that means it was either Mysterio or the Chameleon.
Hey, Chameleon was our idea. We thought of that.
Tell me this, Einstein. Who could have wanted to steal Octavius' technology?
Ooh, we know.
Who?
The Submariner.
Submariner? Get serious, will you?
The mighty Thor.
Are you out of your mind? Don't answer that.
Galactus.
Forget it, Eddie. I need Jameson's help on this. We're going to the Bugle.
Jameson. We hate Jameson.
You bonehead. We're not going to see Jameson. We're going to use his computer database.
Ooh, are we gonna surf the web?
The two head to the Daily Boo to look for some answers on JJ's computer, because you know, J. Jonah Jameson is the best person on computers. Venom leaves, however, sensing my boy Carnage nearby and jumps through a window, leaving a lot of property damage behind. Spidey finds that the Bugle has been infected with symbiotes, these adorable little pink pieces of gum.
Surf the web.
Shut up, Brock. We don't have time.
After some more investigating, Spidey comes face to face with the fake Spider-Man. So it turns out to be Mysterio, old Fishbowl himself, who goes all King Kong and becomes a giant in size. Beating Bubblehead, Spider-Man learns that Mysterio was hired to distract him when the pink gum symbiotes infect New York. Okay, 2 points. 1. Why has Mysterio never used this size change before? This would be really useful in fighting Spider-Man. And 2. While I think Spider-Man has a great rogues gallery to rival Batman's, am I the only one that thinks Mysterio is, well, a bit useless? He talks a big game, but all he has is illusions at his arsenal, and once you get through that, you just punch him in his fishbowl head and that's it. Game over. Mission failed, we won't get him next time. At least with the other villains, there's like an actual genuine challenge or threat for the most part. I've just never understood the appeal of Mysterio. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I've never gotten why he has so many fans. Oh well, someone must love old Fishbowl out here. Okay, that's the last time I'd call him that.
Mission failed. We'll get him next time.
After a quick encounter with the Punisher, Spidey reaches the warehouse, fights off more gummy boys, finds an underground base, and frees Black Cat. Now, to confront the two mysterious masterminds of the whole plan, the two who infected New York, and it's Doc Ock and Carnage. I mean, yeah, it was kind of obvious from the start, but I do kind of like the idea of these two teaming up. It's a completely odd pairing, an odd couple you could say, but it kind of works. A crazy psychopathic symbiote and a mastermind with tentacles? I don't know, there's something about it that kind of works. Sort of, not really. Venom arrives. Where the bloody hell have you been for the last half an hour, mate? As Venom takes on Carnage, leaving Spidey to face Doc Ock alone. Doc Ock is taken down and so is Venom. Like, seriously, Venom gets jobbed out so badly by Carnage. He got jobbed out and jobbed out hard. Now Spidey has to take on my boy Carnage and his wonderful ear-pulling voice. Carnage is beaten, the day is saved, and New York is once again, nah fam. Carnage bonds with Doc Ock to form Monster Ock. Story time, when I first played this game, it took me ages to beat Carnage, and I was so happy I'd gone through the entire game, beaten the final boss, and this bastard comes out of nowhere, scaring the hell out of 7-year-old me and making me fall off my bed in the process. So cheers for that, you ugly bugger. Monster Ock chases Spidey throughout the entire base before being caught in an explosion. The Carnage symbiote sacrifices itself to save Doc Ock, and he and Spidey are rescued by Black Cat, Venom, and Captain America. Why? Just cuz.
Hey, Spidey, can you get us Captain America's autograph?
Oh, brother.
In the final moments, we see that the heroes sharing a game of cards, while the villains are also playing cards and moaning about how horrible Doc Ock's plan was. This scene is just pure comedic gold. Between Rhino not knowing how to play cards because, well, he's stupid, Doc Ock banging his head on the cell bars in frustration, and Mysterio having a poster of a girl in a bikini that also has a fishbowl on her head, I'm not gonna lie, that made me laugh a lot. So someone must like him. But I do love the idea of him just getting that poster and slapping a fishbowl sticker on top of it, like his chef kiss. Overall, the story is very good. It's got a very simple narrative, Spidey trying to stop villains turning everyone into symbiotes. They really do play up who the two main villains are, but it's so clear that it's Doc Ock and Carnage right from the start. But to be honest, it doesn't really bother me that much. But what makes this story so good is that if you put this into a Spider-Man comic, it would not stick out nor feel out of place in the slightest. Hell, you can even put this in the old 90s show and it would work quite well. It has a lot of memorable roles. I think the writers really do understand how Spidey's role is not just stopping bad guys' job done. It has a lot of big decisions to his choices, going back to the Venom on the big TV screen scene. They also understand how crazy and bizarre the situations he's thrown into and all the different locations that come along with it. All the chapters feel unique and different, but they add to the overall plot. And I think for a game this old to do that so well is honestly just wonderful. It knows what story it wants to be, a fun, crazy, big stake Spider-Man comic story. Is it silly, hilarious, and stupid at points? Oh yeah, totally, 100%. But that's the charm with this game. It knows that and uses it to the best advantage possible. It's great to see the amount of effort put into Spider-Man's characters and other Marvel characters that they were able to put in. I've played this game so many times, but even I can say that it's still a joy to see all the villains and cameos that we get throughout the game. They went all out with the cast, and by God does it show, which flex well with the dialogue between the characters. They're often some of the best scenes in the entire game and help paint a larger world at play. I will say though, this is not the best game to be getting into Spider-Man or Marvel in general, because they don't really give a lot of background information on anybody here. There is a character viewer on the menu with a little bit of information narrated by Stan Lee, but that's pretty much all you're getting, to be honest. Overall, it's a very good story. Just a simple, easy story with lots of memorable moments and a truckload of Marvel's finest.
Time out. All of you guys were working together, and you still couldn't take down Spider-Man?
It's not my fault. Doc Ock's plan was horrible.
Now we have the gameplay. What's a video game without gameplay, you may say? Well, this is the first 3D Spider-Man game, so it's very important when it comes to the evolution of superhero games. This game was made by developers Neversoft and published by Activision. I'm playing the PlayStation 1 version on the PS3's backwards compatibility. So being the first 3D Spider-Man meant this was the first time where you could swing building to building. By pressing R2, you enter a web sling animation where you travel in one specific path to whichever direction you're facing at that time. I think considering this is the first game to implement it, it would be a bit unfair to compare it to later games, but it works well enough. You just have to plan out your routes a little bit more and just not go crazy and bore to your death. You also have the web zip line, which pressing R1 will allow you to zip up to the ceilings, allow you to jump down, attack enemies, or zip up into vents. And you have the web targeting mode, which by pressing L1, where the name suggests, you'll be able to target the area you want to swing to or zip over to. Then there is combat. Being Spider-Man, you're going to fight a lot of different people, whether it's one of his rogues, a random thug, a lizard boy, another pink gummy boy. You got your basic attacks like punches with square, kicks with circle, and web attacks with triangle. You can also use jump with X to pair that with a kick or punch to do a jump attack. That sounds good, but then there are the web attack. Of course, you can just web up enemies, but if you pair it up with the directional buttons, you get different web-based attack. Left and triangle gets you web gloves, which does twice the damage. The web pull with down and triangle pulls them towards you. The web dome with right and triangle forms a dome which gets multiple enemies at once. But the one you'll need to know the most is up and triangle, which is the impact web ball. This web attack is needed in a lot of boss fights. It does great damage damage, and combine that with a fire web pickup, oh boy. You got your standard health and web refills. You can hold it up to about 10 web cartridges, but some of the web attacks do use a lot of them fast. But you can also pick up fire web cartridges to use on the pink gummy boys, and it works great. But you can only use it on them and in a very small amount of levels. But wouldn't it be just hilarious to think if Spider-Man decided to use one of these on Venom or Carnage? You could say he has a very flammable personality. Jesus, that got dark quickly. Then there is the Spidey armor. This recolors the suit to a blue and white design and gives you an extra health on top. It's really useful in the boss fights. So that's a lot to digest with the combat and swinging. As I said, it works for the most part despite the dated nature of the game. I think you can get a hand of it fairly quickly though. It's not the most polished, but it works decently enough. The one thing, however, I can never work around is the goddamn camera. This thing, oh boy, has a mind of its own. It's not like a fixed one like in the older Resident Evil games. This is one where you have to turn the character around for it to line up. It's not too bad when you're swinging or walking down corridors, but the moment you get surrounded by a group of enemies or godforsaken have to climb some of the walls, oh brother is it a pain. The amount of times I was dogpiled by the enemies because the camera would not line up properly, yikes. It's not the best. It is dated and it kind of makes the combat more frustrating than it needs to be at times. It's the only real big negative about the gameplay, sadly, and it does kind of come into play a lot. Throughout the levels you'll find different comic book covers that you can collect and look at in the gallery. What's also cool is that each of them have a little bit of detail about the story in question. That's just some great attention to detail right there. There's also a lot of costumes. What's cool is they're not just for cosmetic purposes, they actually give you different abilities. For example, finishing the game unlocks you the black suit. This suit has the really useful ability to have unlimited webbing. It's just the little things that make you want to go explore the levels and find these little hidden goodies. It definitely increases replay value and makes you want to play certain levels again with these new suits.
Good God, are you alright? Fine, why do you ask?
Speaking of the levels, let's talk about them. One of the highlights of the game is the variation of types of levels you have. In the first few levels, you have to swing to the bank and save hostages. Then you fight Scorpion. Then you get chased down by the cops in a helicopter across the rooftop. Then you fight Rhino, have to chase Venom, and then have a small fight. Next thing you know, you're in the sewers chasing him down through puzzles and doors. And then you fight Mysterio. My point is, there's a lot of variation in each level, and you're never just doing the same thing over and over again. Neversoft took a lot of care not to just copy and paste the same thing over and over again, which honestly I really appreciate. However, there's one level in this game I never ever look forward to, and that's the train level. Jeez, where do I even start? So the whole point of the level is that you have to stay on the train till you get to the stop that Mary Jane is at. Well, that sounds fairly simple, doesn't it? Let me tell you something. It is not simple. It is very far from simple. What makes it really awkward is the camera fighting against you. You have to fight off all the lizard boys while also being careful not to punch yourself off the bloody train. Very easy to slip off, believe me. It's easily the worst level in the entire game, and my god does it drag. It feels like it goes on for eternity. It's worse than being forced to watch an Amy Schumer stand-up comedy show. Like when I played this level, I always think to myself, when does this end? It just feels like it goes on for years. But overall the levels are really good for the most part, and there's no copy and paste nature to them. It's not bland unlike some other games I know. There's a usual pattern with the levels too, which is usually 4 levels and then a boss fight, so you get an idea when the next boss fight is around the corner for the most part. Now the boss fights. How do the boss fights fare? Well, they're kind of a mixed bag of quality. First you fight Scorpion in the Bugle. There's a decent boss fight to start off with. You just need to make sure he doesn't attack JJ too much and dodge his tail attacks. A decent start. Boss 2 is Rhino. A very easy boss fight. You just gotta dodge his charge attacks and lead him to the electrical pillars. Shocking, really, if we're being honest. Then we have the first Venom fight. Honestly, a lot more difficult than I remember it being. Venom likes to use a lot of long-range attacks. The web balls here are great damage against him. You can pick up a nearby car and throw it at him, which helps a lot. Just make sure he doesn't grab you and do, well, whatever the hell this thing is. Especially, what is he actually doing here? Keep it PG, Venom. Think of the children. He's also the only boss in the game you fight twice, so the second fight is pretty much very similar to the first one. Just make sure Mary Jane doesn't drown in the water by hitting the switches on the side. A little different, but basically very similar. Then we have Mysterio. Well, this is probably the worst boss fight in the game. No, I'm not just hating on the man, but this boss fight kinda sucks. In concept, the idea sounds really good. A giant Mysterio trying to squash you, a monster versus simple mortal, a David versus Goliath matchup, something like what the God of War games would do years later. But me just comparing this to God of War is kind of a bit insulting to God of War itself. It's just not a very good fight. The first stage of the fight is not so bad. You have to use the impact webs to damage his weak spots. Fairly simple, right? right? Well then that's where the second part comes along and slaps you right in the face with a rush of difficulty curve. See, his helmet in the second part is his weak spot, and you have to hit them with the impact webs. Let's run down the list. 1. You have to avoid electrical flaws all around the levels. 2. A pair of lasers that have very bloody random patterns and making them a nightmare to jump over. 3. You have to line yourself up every time to face Mysterio so you land the attack perfectly, otherwise you'll miss it and have to try it all over again. And 4, just to add that cherry on top of the cake, he can grab you and throw you down to the low electrical levels, meaning you have to climb all the way back up again and start the whole thing over again. That's a lot to deal with while trying to aim the webs at his weak points and have to jump all around all the time just to land one hit on him. I like a fair challenge, but this is just overkill. No joke, it took me 7 times when playing through this game to beat this boss on my playthrough, and all of those deaths came from the second half of this fight. Yeah, easily the worst one. I like the idea, but just bad execution. A for effort, E for execution. Sorry, Bowling Ball, it's just not your day, mate.
Big man thing, yeah? It's not looking good, bruv. It's not looking good.
Then we have the final 3 bosses. Doc Ock's fight is not too bad actually. You have to hover around hitting switches so that his force field will shut down, hold him up for a few seconds so you can land a few strikes. Wait a minute, he designed a force field that can incapacitate himself. Doc, I thought you were supposed to be the smart one out of you and Carnage. A decent boss fight, but fairly easy. Speaking of, then we fight Carnage. See, Doc Ock set up a sound barrier just in case Carnage tried to double cross him. Hold on a second, you'll set up a failsafe in case Carnage tries to double cross you, not make your force field work properly for you? Sure, okay, I'll buy it I guess. Carnage is a little bit tricky as you have to get him into the center of the barrier and hold him there long enough with your webbing. Trying to punch him is pointless seeing as the damage is not very effective. His attacks do a lot of damage though, and by the way, him running at you is just hilarious. Look at him. What have they done to him? I also counted a weird glitch in this fight where Carnage just glitches out of the room. He knew what was coming and just wanted to leave. Honestly mate, I can't really blame you. A good fight overall though. Anything so I don't have to hear him talking again. Finally we have Monster Ock. This is not really a boss fight per se, but more of a chase, and boy I love it. It's a great tense level as he chases you through level to level of the base. It also requires you to make a lot of last minute zipline up to the top of the ceilings. If this is your first time playing it though, you won't beat it first time. Believe me, you just won't. It's one of those levels you need a lot of good memorization to beat, and you need to just calculate each move very carefully, otherwise he'll catch you and that's game over. There is a helpful chase mirror that shows how far he is behind you, but if you mess up you can recover. I would avoid web swing for the most part, to be honest. I found jumping and running a lot easier. Before my playthrough, I had not played this game in years and I was fully expecting myself to fail at least once on this, but to my utter shock, I actually beat this level first time. Now that was a hell yeah moment. This is a great final level and easily one of the most memorable parts in the entire game. It's tense and challenging, but a fair challenge overall. Okay, we have to be on the home stretch now. Okay, right, just a little bit more. Okay, step up. No. Okay, hop a little more. Is that the end? We're at the end? You have to be at the end, right? Surely it's... Oh my god, I've done this first time. I haven't played this game in years. First time. Oh man, with that music and that voice, it makes it 10 times more tense and scary. Honestly, reminds me a lot of Nemesis from Resident Evil 3, to be honest. Come to think of it, these two have very similar looking appearances. Overall, the boss fights are a mixed bag. There's some easy ones, there's some really difficult ones, some alright ones, and some great ones. A real pick and mix bag of quality. Now let's talk about the presentation. For PlayStation 1 standards, the models are not bad. I like how comic accurate they are and how much they pop out in every scene. Compared to the regular baddies, the heroes and villains stand out in the best way possible. The faces sometimes are a bit off, but there is way worse on the PlayStation 1. Although it has always bothered me that Spider-Man does not have his webs on his costume. That feels like a really big omission to put on the main character's costume. But whatever, it's not a massive thing, but it's just a weird thing they forgot to put on. I do like how they gave an explanation how you can't go onto the streets due to the limitations of the system using the green gas in-game. Very clever move. The pre-rendered cutscenes look good though. Some of the movements though are a bit hilarious, and the arms in particular have a mind of their own. But they still work quite well, and they're quite impressive for the time. The backgrounds have a lot of detail. The sewers and underground bases in particular have some really impressive textures for the time on the environments and all-around surroundings. It's a product of time for sure, but it still holds up quite nicely, and for the system it was on, I think it works quite well. You know what also mostly holds up very well? The voice acting. There are some familiar voices across the board. Spider-Man, for example, is voiced by Ryo Romano, who voiced Spider-Man in the Spider-Man Unlimited series. Does anyone remember that show? No? Just me? Okay then. He's a really underrated voice for Spider-Man. Whenever you ask who their favourite voice for the character is today, you get three answers: Josh Keaton, Christopher Daniel Barnes, and Yuri Lowenthal. But Romano does a really good job at the character. He nails just the right tone and the jokey nature without becoming annoying or painful to listen to. Jennifer Hale voices both MJ and Black Cat. I mean, it's Jennifer Hale. She's one of the best voice actors in the entire business. MJ is really solid, if very short in the game, but a Black Cat is probably my favourite for her. Now, when I read a comic and it has Black Cat in it, this is the voice I definitely hear. She's great. Kinda wish her Black Cat was in the game a bit more, to be honest though. Doc Ock is voiced by Efren Zimler Jr., who you may recognise from the 90s animated show. He is really, really great. Like Jennifer Hale, this is the voice I hear when I read Doc Ock in the comics. Though I kinda wish the audio level for his voice was raised up a little bit. It's a little quieter compared to everyone else's performance, and with the music he can be a bit hard to understand at points. However, then there is Darren Norris and D. Bradley Baker, who voice everyone else in this game. I'm not joking, you could honestly rename this Baker or Norris man the game. Norris voices Venom / Eddie Brock, Mysterio, Scorpion, Punisher, Human Torch, and Captain America, while Baker voices Carnage, J. Jonah Jameson, The Lizard, Daredevil, and Rhino. I'm honestly amazed by the talent of these two. The number of characters they voice is so larger, but none of them sound the same. It really shows the talent and range they both have. For me personally, Norris's best voice in the game is easily Venom. He does such a great job of making Venom sound incredibly menacing and dangerous, while also at the same time making him a complete goof and just a complete comic foil to Spider-Man. That is not an easy feat, but Norris pulls it off perfectly. He's my absolute favourite voice for Venom for that reason alone. Baker does a great job with a lot of the characters too. I really love his Lizard and his J. Jonah Jameson in particular. The range of this man never ceases to amaze me. Now, like I said, most of the voice acting holds up pretty darn well. Most of it. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about Carnage. Just gonna say right up front, I have never liked Baker's Carnage. Sadly, it's the one grey area of the voice acting for me. For those that don't know, and I'm guessing it's probably about 3 of you at this point, Carnage is my favourite Spider-Man villain. So when he's included in any different Spider-Man media, whether it's a comic, a game, or a show itself, or even a film, I get really hyped up. You should have seen my reaction when I saw the Let There Be Carnage trailers. I had a Cheshire Cat smile when I was watching those.
My boy!
I love Baker's work, but this voice does not work for Carnage. What's the best way I can describe this? It sounds like a screaming child not getting the PlayStation 5 game they wanted for their Christmas presents from their parents.
Nice try! Where are you going, Spider-Man? I'm back here, Spider-Man! I am going to cut you!
It's way too high-pitched. When I think of the best Carnage voice, I go back again to the Spider-Man animated series in the 90s. It's the perfect voice for Carnage. It's creepy, horrifying. If you heard that voice down a dark alleyway, you would be terrified. I know I sure as hell would. When you look at this thing, what voice do you imagine coming out of it? If I heard this game's Carnage voice in real life, I would just laugh my ass off. Like I said, I don't know whether it's the direction given or the voice or just a combination of the two. I love Baker's work in this game, but I'm just not a fan of this voice. Hell, Monster Ock sounds more like Carnage than Carnage does himself. What does really hit well is the soundtrack. Holy cow, this game has a belter of a soundtrack. It's definitely more heavy metal and rock genre. Man, there are so many good tracks in here I can still remember off the top of my head. Some of my favourites are the Venom fight theme, Mysterio's boss theme, the police chase track, and the Monster Ock song. Holy god, this song is terrifying. It makes that level 10 times more scary with that song playing in the background. Now that I think about it, this song actually reminds me a lot of Nemesis's song from Resident Evil 3. Wait, did they just copy Nemesis from Resident Evil 3 for this game or something? As much as I don't like Carnage in this game, his boss theme though, pretty damn good. Definitely give them a listen on YouTube when you can. I also forgot to mention the What If mode, which allows you to replay the game with different changes with a cameo from the Watcher. There are some funny moments like JJ and Scorpion shouting Marco Polo over each other, and Carnage's voice being even higher. And you thought regular Carnage carnage was bad. Oh boy, this thing is even worse. One other thing I want to talk about is the cheat code section. If you enter a swear word, for example, Spider-Man would just punch it. Yeah, any swear word, I'm not joking. He'll just pop out of the screen and just punch it. That's just pure genius. 10 out of 10, best game ever. So Spider-Man 2000 is definitely a game of its era. However, for being on the PlayStation 1, it's quite an impressive game. Some parts of it have definitely not aged well, like the camera for example, but there's just so much good hidden beneath it. The solid story, the mostly great voice acting, the fantastic music, and the huge variety of levels make this easily one of the best Spider-Man games ever made. I would 100% recommend giving this a go if you have not already. You'll have an absolute blast with this one. You can tell Neversoft really had a blast making this game and how much they love Spider-Man, because the love and care really shows. Product of its time? Yes, but a quality game? 100%. Please give it a go if you haven't already. I suppose we should get someone else's opinion on this. Oh, Venom, what do you think about this game, buddy?
Steve, bummer. You're in the doghouse now, dude.
Coming, honey.
Stop it. Get some help.
So a while ago, I reviewed Spider-Man 2000 on the PlayStation 1. While it was a very flawed game in a lot of ways, it was still a really fun game to go back and play. It was, after all, one of my favourite games to play from my childhood. It was a really great time to see how much care Neversoft took into crafting a rich and engaging Spider-Man experience. From the cheesy plot, the different costumes, the replay value, and of course the massive Chad himself, Venom.
You idiot!
He was just the best, the highlight of the story by far. You can honestly just make a selection of clips of Venom from the first game and put it into a film, and it would still be so entertaining. It'd be a way better film than both the Venom movies anyway.
You are making us look bad.
The first game did really well critically and financially. It was received very well by both critics and fans. It also sold a lot of copies, being the 48th best-selling PlayStation 1 game and selling over 1 million copies on the PlayStation 1 alone. So what would be next? With that kind of success, a sequel was going to be made, and thus Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro arrived on October 19th, 2001. Though this game had a number of bizarre decisions and troubling changes from the last game. 1. Enter Electro was only released on the PlayStation 1. That is very strange, because Spider-Man 2000 came out on PlayStation 1, Game Boy Color, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, and PC. So imagine loving the first game, finding out there's a sequel that's just come out, and being on a system you don't own. That must really suck. 2. The game only came out a year and a month after the first game. Now this was not completely uncommon for the PlayStation 1 era of games. The Crash Bandicoot games came out on a yearly basis after all. And 3, the biggest one, Neversoft was not involved with this game at all. While it did use a similar engine from the previous game, this time Vicarious Visions was handling the game. That's 3 red flags and we haven't even started the game yet.
Oh no, this is horrible!
Slightly worrying, but believe it or not, I have never played this game before. Unlike the first game, which I have a lot of history with, this game I have virtually none at all. So this is going to be a really interesting experience for sure. Or could it be a shocking one? Before we start, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more content, and click the notification bell to be notified of all new videos. Now, with the background information out of the way, let's web swing right into Spider-Man 2's Enter Electro's plot. Spoilers ahead, of course. Spidey 2 starts off with a really helpful recap of the previous game's story. It's worth noting the recap uses the Dreamcast/PC graphics. You can tell by Spidey having his lines on his costume, but in the PlayStation 1 version, he doesn't. Still, very helpful recap indeed. Set shortly after the first game's event, on a dark night, a mysterious cloaked figure breaks into some scientific laboratory center. He takes out some scientists, one of which being Kurt Connors, aka the Lizard. See you later on in the game, mate. The figure is revealed to be Electro. I mean, it's not like the game's called Enter Electro of anything. Still, Enter Frogman would have been an interesting game concept, or a unforgettable game experience. Electro steals 2 pieces of a device. He knocks out the guards, escapes the facility, and laughs like a madman, doing his best Joker laugh impression. I can see why Electro has a mask on. Put it back on, mate. No one wants to see that. Also, the state of the security of this place. There is no one to stop Electro, only they turn up when he's already taken the bloody device in his money in the bank briefcase. Man, we suck, don't we? Oh yeah, we are totally useless. We're so getting sacked tomorrow, aren't we? Yes, Larry. Yes, we are. Still, not a bad opening though. Oh, Jameson, you bastard. Then we throw to Spidey. He goes through a quick little bit of training with Beast from the X-Men. Okay. Weird choice to have Beast be the tutorial guide hero in this game.
What the hell is even that?
In the last game we had Black Cat, which made perfect sense because she's connected to Spidey and makes sense to be the one helping him out. Although tutorial lessons from your ex. Wow, that's a new level of awkward.
Hi, babe.
Still better than Mary Jane though. While out on patrol, Spidey happens to spot one of the robberies taking place at a building owned by Biotech, the same company Electro attacked early in the game.
I guess old Dutch got all the smoke he wants.
Spidey places a Spidey Tracer on the head thief's motorcycle, taking down tons of hired thugs on the way like a row of dominoes. Spidey follows him to the abandoned warehouse, but the head thief is passing off the stolen briefcase to a contact. Spidey takes out the thugs in the warehouse and interrogates one of them. I always wonder why Spidey doesn't do this more often, although it is a bit too Batman-ish.
You know, you can bleed to death without ever spilling a drop. All on the inside. Tell me the plan, or I start swinging.
Though Black Suit Spider-Man would 100% do this. Spidey is then ambushed by the head thug, who turns out to be Shocker.
Good old predictable Herman.
Spidey beats up Shocker, and they both escape the exploding warehouse. Following the thug's tip, Spidey heads for the airfield, where the contact is headed towards. He has to stop a bomb on the way though. As I said last time, Spider-Man games love bomb missions. Cause when the bomb arrives,
there'll be nowhere left to hide.
Spidey takes out a machine gun nest waiting for the police at the airfield, and stops a runaway airplane from it crashing. Oh, believe me, we will get back to you later, you devil of level. Meanwhile, the contact escapes via the helicopter. Spidey places another tracer on it, helicopter, and tracks it to the train yard owned by Hammerhead.
Nice work, Bug.
Working his way through the train yard and briefly fighting the Sandman, Spidey catches up to the fleeing train with a contact on board.
Bingo! Good thing I've been trained for this. Hey, you get it? Trained for this? Okay, let's move on, shall we?
Well, that was fucking dreadful.
Spidey confronts the contact, who turns out to be the Beetle, and just as he confronts him, he escapes with a briefcase. But he unknowingly leaves a clue behind for Spider-Man, an invitation to the Science and Industry Ball.
First thing we'd better do is split up and search the school for clues.
Oh, hi and bye, Beale, because, well, we'll never see him again. We don't even get to fight him, that's so lame. And besides the villain meeting, we never see him again in the game. Speaking of that scene, Electro meets with his hired thugs and Sandman to discuss the next part of his plan. Electro explains he needs to use the Bio-Nexus device he stole earlier at the start of the game, which can amplify someone's bioelectricity to power an entire city block on a normal human. However, with Electro at the steering wheel, he can amplify his powers and make himself a god in basic electricity form. So imagine Zeus's powers from God of War or Greek mythology on Electro. They've acquired all the pieces, but it still needs a power source to properly power it up. Electro then introduces his new hired force led by Hammerhead.
Look at the size of that thing, Doctor.
Electro sends Hammerhead and his men to kidnap Dr. Watts at the ball. Actually, there's a lot of key information about how the device works. Man, when Hammerhead entered the scene, it suddenly felt like the game turned into one of the Mafia games.
Frank told me you ran into some trouble?
Yes, sir. My cab got smashed up pretty good.
At the ball itself, Hammerhead takes a lot of hostages, but is fought by Spider-Man, who rescues the hostages and defeats Hammerhead. However, during the fight itself, Dr. Watts is captured by Sandman.
I don't like sand.
Spidey goes to find out more information on Dr. Watts and why the villains are after her, so he calls Dr. Kurt Connors at Biotech, only to hear a lot of strange noises on the other end of the phone line. I don't know why Spidey is so worried. It sounds like a typical Xbox 360 voice chat on one of the old Call of Duty games to me.
What do you want? I want to know why you just shouted at me down the microphone.
What did I fucking shout at you down the mic for? Playing your fucking mouth, mate. I'm a grown man. You sent me a message first, yeah?
Spidey infiltrates Biotech and makes his way past the security and robots to reach Connor's lab. He finds out that Connors has turned into the lizard.
Look at the size of that.
After creating an antidote to restore Connors back to normal, Spidey learns from him about Electro's plan for the Bio-Nexus device, leading him to investigate Dr. Walt's lab and discover that the device can be powered by a special type of sapphire. When out of complete nowhere, he's ambushed by Sandman. Mr. Sandman, bring me a drink. Bum 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 bum. You are the most useless villain that I've ever seen. After defeating Sandman by flushing him down a sewer gate, kind of like the way he did with Spider-Man 3, Spidey sees a news report about the sapphire being on display at a museum. So it's a race to get to the museum before Electro does. Fighting through some electrical powered samurai. Okay then, when did this turn into Ghost of Tsushima all of a sudden?
You have no honor.
and you are a slave to it.
Spidey battles Electro, and in the ensuing fight, Dr. Watts is captured by Electro again. He offers to free her if Spider-Man gives him the sapphire. Spider-Man reluctantly obliges and misses in an attempt to reclaim the jewel before Electro catches it. Taking the opportunity, Electro uses the gem to supercharge himself into pure electricity, or Hyper Electro as the game calls him.
I fear no man, but that thing, it scares me.
Spidey follows him to the top of a nearby skyscraper. However, he's unable to directly attack Electro. Instead, he uses the tower's generators to overload the Bionexus device, destroying it and cutting off Electro's powers and finally defeating him. Electro is in jail with Hammerhead and Shocker, who are playing poker. Electro keeps complaining that he would have been a god if Spider-Man hadn't ruined his plan, and hilariously, Hammerhead just tells him to shut up.
Would you shut up?
When Hammerhead asks if Shocker knows any more card games, Shocker states he has no idea. Those guys maybe do, which turns out to be the villains from the first game, still in their jail cells together, which I always was baffled about. Surely putting them all in the same jail cell was not a smart idea, but they could all just easily break out together. Put them in separate jail cells, guys. Shocker asks if any of them know how to play Go Fish, and much to Spidey's annoyance, 4 is now credited with saving New York from Electro.
I need a new agent.
As he swings off into the sunset. And that's the game's story. So overall, how is this story? Meh. I mean, it's not a terrible story. It's quite similar in a lot of ways to the first game's story. Villains coming together to work as a team to take over New York and stop Spider-Man. I mean, it's different with Electro wanting to be a god of electricity versus Doc Ock and Carnage's plan to turn everyone into symbiotes. But the beats are very similar to the point where it almost feels copied and pasted from the original. Though, to be honest, this game lacks one major thing. It lacks the charm, fun, and memorable moments the first game had, which is a real shame because this could have been a really good expansion from the first game story and really explore some new story elements. Sadly, due to this game being made in such a short amount of time, we never really got to see that. It just feels like the game really never gets out of first gear. The Rose Gallery also feels like a massive drop in quality compared to the first game. In the first we had Doc Ock, Venom, Scorpion, Rhino, Mysterio, and of course, my boy Carnage. This game has Electro, okay, Shocker, alright, Sandman, good classic villain, Hammerhead, okay, going a bit down in quality, Lizard, sure, alright, Beetle, I mean, let me put it this way, you have to choose a team to take on Spider-Man. Which team are you choosing, the first game's villain team or the second? You would 100% pick the first. There's no way in hell you would pick the second team.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Electro being the main villain also just doesn't feel right with me. Don't get me wrong, I like Electro, but he's one of those villains that work better in a team as a supporting role. Like as a part of a team like the Sinister Six, great. As the main leader of it, no. I honestly think if I was in control of this game, I would have put Green Goblin as the main villain of this game. Of course, he would not be trying to be a god of electricity, that'd be a bit weird even for Green Goblin, but he and Doc Ock are more characters that work as leaders of a rogue villain group. In fact, one fact I forgot to make in the review of the first game, in the what if mode during the police helicopter chase level, you can go inside one of the cranes and find a secret Green Goblin lair with pumpkin bombs. That could have been a really subtle and great way to introduce Goblin as the main villain of this game.
Tough day at the office, huh? Mine is a killer.
This game is also really short. I beat it in 5 hours. This game only has 24 levels. The first game had 34 levels. That's 10 less levels from the first. A sequel should be an improvement from the original, not a downgrade. But this story in general is just really forgettable. Not terrible, just not nearly as memorable as the first game story. Now with the story out of the way, let's cover the gameplay. Not much has changed between the first and second game. The combat is pretty much the exact same. It's still quite fun and it flows decently. The web attacks are the same, the power-ups are very similar, the same collectibles still spread around each level. There are a few different web power-ups added though. The first is the electrical webbing mostly used on the robots in the biotech level. The ice webbing allows you to freeze enemies and shatter them into pieces. Wait, they shatter? Spidey, that's straight up murder.
Tonight's forecast. A freeze is coming.
Finally, the purple cartridges. They were used in the lizard boss level to stun him so you can land a few punches in, but the power-ups are really nothing to write home about. I miss the fire webbing though.
All I want to do is set the world on fire.
The web singing is still the same too, and so is the damn camera. It's not nearly as bad as the first game, but like the first game, there'll be so many times where it still screws you over a lot. If you have played the first game, you'll be able to jump into this one right away. How do the levels and bosses fare though? Like the first game, it's a mixed bag. The levels in general are fine, just fine. There are some variation with the levels, going on rooftops to stop bombs and taking down thugs. So I gotta say, the variation feels a lot less fresher than the first game. While I was never bored playing this game, I did feel like at certain points I was just doing the same thing over and over again. It was still really nice to be able to go on the streets though, even if it's just for one level, with a surprising amount of basketballs hanging around the place. What I mean by the copy-paste nature is that a lot of levels are about opening doors in a train yard, opening doors at biotech, and opening electrical doors at the museum. I'm starting to see a theme here. The levels that do branch away from this, oh brother, some of them are really bad. The airport level, for example, where you have to take out the guards before the police arrive. Plan ahead this level or you will get blindsided by the thugs and the machine guns, and they can chip away your health really easily.
Oh, hello there!
Then there's the level where you have to climb up the wall of the museum to fight Electro, but he's sending electrical blasts down to bring you back down to the bottom. But man, the timing is so precise, and one slip and you're right back to the start. And the patterns of the electrical attacks are so flipping random and annoying. The worst level though is easily the plane level. I would like to formally apologize to the train level in the last game, because compared to this, it is like heaven compared to this abomination of a level. This plane level is 10 times worse.
That wasn't very nice. Actually, it was horrible.
Jesus Christ, let's go through the list. 1. You have to take out the explosive barrels with your web blast. 2. You have to open the doors in the hangars really quickly so the plane doesn't crash into it. 3. You have to not get caught up in the plane and keep ahead of it at all times. And 4. Just the cherry on top of the cake. Even if you do all this right, at the end of it, you have to slow down the plane with your webbing, making sure it doesn't crash into a fucking wall. Like, God, like, oh, what a horrible level. It's easily the worst level out of the two games, and it just was a pain in the backside. No joke, took me 10 times to beat this, and by the 10th one I wanted to snap my controller in half like Bane did to Batman in Dark Knight Rises. The game as a whole though is fairly easy, but this level, god damn it, is the worst. So the levels as a whole are not that bad, but like this game as a whole really, it's not very memorable and a bit disappointing. Speaking of disappointing, let's talk about the boss fights. There are 6 boss fights in this game total. Electro being the main villain, of course, he gets 2 boss fights. The first one's not that difficult, you just have to wait for your chance to jump in and attack him and repeat over and over again. It's a bit repetitive, but it's not that bad.
I mean, it's alright, like...
The second one with Hyper Electro is a bit different. Electro is vulnerable to his attack hitting the generators, leaving him open to attacking him. Sandman's fight is a bit simple. You have to use the valve to turn up the water pressure and use the water pipes to make him wet. Get those dirty thoughts out of your head, folks. Do that over and over again, and that's it. An okay fight, but honestly a bit bland.
Pile of worms.
The fight with the lizard is probably the best one in the entire game. You have to access his computer first, needing to combine 3 different chemicals together to make a serum to beat him. Then you have to web shoot that at him and punch him loads of times, and that's it. Just lava, rinse, repeat. However, Shocker and Hammerhead, well, these fights are honestly terrible. Why, you may ask? Well, because they rely on the web yank attack. In the first game, the web yank was done by holding triangle and down. It wasn't the most reliable web attack, and it was probably the one I used the least in the first game. However, this game forces you to use it, and the results are not a pretty sight. It's not very reliable. The Shocker one, for example, you need to pull boxes down on top of him. The problem is the boxes fly everywhere except on Shocker himself.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
And honestly, you can't attack him any other way though. I just found using the web yank to pull him down and then just punch him quickly and then dodge out the way when he attacks is the best way to go about it. Hammerhead's one is a little different, as you have to pull his machine gun out of his hand and then punch him. But just as you do that, he can then charge and attack you, leaving you vulnerable and missing your chance, and then you have to do the whole thing over again. They're just 2 terrible fights for the same reason, honestly.
Had enough, huh? Now hand over that rock.
Sucker.
Man, besides the story though, the boss fights are definitely the thing that feels the most drop in quality compared to the first game. The first game had a really good selection of boss fights. Not all of them were good, granted, but they were still different and unique and didn't rely on a web yank mechanic that doesn't really work that well.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
and my day is ruined.
The game still looks really good for the time. There are parts of it that are still the same quality as the first game. Let's see Spidey has lines on his costume. Still such a weird omission from the previous game. The backgrounds are still okay, but man, they reuse a lot of different environments from the first game, just with the colors and the locations swapped around. Though is it me, or do the pre-rendered cutscenes look a bit off compared to the first game? The movements look more stiffer than the first game, and they don't flow as well. The returning voice acting is solid though. They all do the best with their characters. Rita Romano is still really good as Spidey, even if the dialogue is way worse than the first game. The old characters are solid too. Although, is it me, or does Shocker and Sandman sound like someone's dad whose voice has been knackered by years of smoking?
I was never any good at poker.
They almost sound like someone off of EastEnders.
I know who you are!
The music as a whole, however, is a massive step down. I barely remember any songs in this game after finishing it, besides the menu theme, which is at best alright, and the Electro fight music at the end, which is pretty good. Now, if you add his Amazing Spider-Man 2 song, that's the only good thing about that film, but still, we need to add it somewhere. Not great music, to be honest, just generic, bland, forgettable video game music.
Bland.
One thing this game does do differently is the Create a Spider mode. How it works, you pick a costume and 3 abilities. These can be stealth, increased webbing, unlimited health, etc, etc, which both the recent Spider-Man games have used also. So this game did do something really great that inspired future games of Spider-Man. You got a lot of great costumes to use too, and there's something for everybody, so mix and match as you please. The cheat code mode is still really fun when you enter a swear word though. Only this time, Spider-Man punches the word and brings up a new one instead.
Language.
So in summary, Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro is not a terrible game, but it's a very forgettable and just a overall meh one. I think if you play this game back to back with the first one, seeing it as a bundle, I don't think it would be too bad. By itself though, yikes. It's not even on the same level as the first game. I understand this game had way less development time compared to the first. Vicarious Visions did the best they could with the time, and I appreciate the effort, but overall though, it's just a forgettable Spider-Man game. I would say only play this game if you're a die-hard Spider-Man fan, and probably play it back to back with the first game. Combined together, it's about 8 hours long. But yeah, by itself, a meh, forgettable Spider-Man game. But I am glad I finally played it after years of being curious about it. It's a perfectly serviceable game, but not a patch on the first. I felt like we should end on some electrical based pun. Enter Electro is not quite the spa it could have been.